So today we're going to talk about the process tools page and how to use the templates that we have available to actually document processes. So before we get there, I just want to remind everyone how you access or get to the process tools page. So one way is through your organization chart. So if you have documented or created your job descriptions like we talked about last week, you can select a position, and then from this position, I can access the processes that I've put on this job description. So when I go and click on a process, it takes me to this screen, which is called the Process Tools. So you see that titled right here, Process Tools. So these are all the templates that are available to document your processes. So through the org chart on a job description, you can access this page. Also, if you look at this breadcrumb trail, it's showing us that this process is on the 4 functions list. And if I click back to one of these links, it takes me to the 4 functions list. And any process that I've put into TouchStone you'll always be able to access it and go to the process tools page for that process just by selecting it. So 2 ways, from the organization chart if you've built that job description, and from the process tools page if you choose to find it this way as well. So when I select the process, whether it be from that job description or from the 4 functions list, it takes me to this screen. Every process has its own process tools page. So every process that you enter into TouchStone, when you select it, it takes you here to the documentation for that process. So every single one of these processes here on the 4 functions, if I select them individually, I'm on the process tools page for this process called client satisfaction. And if I go back and then I select back on this process, I'm going to go to the documentation or the process tools page for this process. So first, I just want to talk in general about all the functionality on the process tools page. And then specifically, we're going to get into work plans and checklists today and talk about strategies and techniques and tips for how to document these 2 particular tools. Next week, we're going to cover the rest of the tools. So we'll talk about all these other templates next week. So when you select a process, like I just did, the first thing you're going to see is what we call the details of the process, and that's this screen right here. If I want to edit the process title, I can just click right on it, and it opens for me to edit. So most everything in TouchStone that is editable is click to edit. So when you select it, it opens for you to edit. Underneath the title right here is what we call the objective. This says resolve and learn from customer complaints through efficient follow-up and distribution of information. So what this objective is supposed to be is a sentence or a phrase which describes what is this process here for? What is it? What's in it? What's the purpose of it? What's the objective of it? So these objectives are important because when you go to document the process, you want to think about what's the scope of it, what's the purpose of it, what is it here to do, because that helps you think about things like where does it start and where does it end, what is accomplished inside of it. So thinking of that first before you go in and document the process is useful. Also, when you're listing out your processes on the 4 functions list, you may put in a process title that you're thinking of in the moment, and then you may go back to it later and think to yourself, what was this here for? I don't remember. Or someone else may be looking at it and say, what did he mean by that? So that's another reason to document these objectives here in the objective field. In addition, this objective shows up on the job description for any process, any position that this process is linked to. So if we go back to the organization chart here and click on a position, this process is right down here. I'll just drag it to the top so it's easier to see. And you can see the objective right underneath it. If this objective wasn't here, this would just be a blank line. So again, another reason to create these objectives is it kind of fills out your job description a little better. So when anybody's looking at it, they can see specifically what's in it or what this process is. Underneath the objective field, we have these two buttons, and we're still on the details of the process right here. This button will turn the process black throughout TouchStone. So you want to fill this in when the process has been completed, when the documentation is done. So you've gone over and used all the tools that were required to fully document the process. Then you fill in this button that says process documentation completed. And then if we go back and look at it just on the 4 functions list, it's going to be black with a little check mark. These ones that are blue, that button hasn't been flipped yet. So that just means that somebody's working on them, but they're not done yet. And then the ones in red are no one's even started it. They haven't put any tools in it at all. So it's just a title at that point. You can also uncheck this box. So if somebody has completed or said the documentation is complete, and then you go look at it and it's not, you can uncheck that and it turns it blue again. So it's manual. It's done by you. This second box will allow you to put the process in the public folder. So here on the dashboard, there's this section called Public Processes. And this is for processes that are company-wide information. So sometimes there's some confusion about what goes in the public folder and what doesn't. The public folder is for company-wide information, processes that are used by everyone in the company. They're not the accountability of 1 or 2 people. They're more things everybody needs to use and access. If they're the accountability of 1 or 2 people, then put them on their job description on the organization chart. Link that process to their job description as opposed to putting it in the public folder. You don't want your public folder kind of cluttered up with all types of processes. Like we talked about last week, if you have a position that fills in for another position, you can just give them access to that person that they fill in for, their job description. So sometimes there's this thought of, I want to put it all in the public folder because then everybody can access it if they need to. So rather than thinking about it that way, preserve the public folder for company-wide information, and instead link the processes to the positions who truly are accountable for them. And then if you have employees who need to have access to more than one position, then just give them access to more than one position, with the understanding that maybe they're not the bookkeeper, but since they're the manager of the bookkeeper, they need to have access to this work as well. Okay, so I'm going to go back here to that process we were just on. Right above the top of the screen here, I just want to point out again this breadcrumb trail. Sometimes it gets missed. Breadcrumb trails throughout TouchStone are a way to show you where you're at. So here you can see where this process lives on the 4 functions list, and you can get back and forth to it pretty quickly. Right above this breadcrumb trail is linked to job description. This will allow you to see which job descriptions this process has been linked to. So right here you can see it's on customer service because it's in orange. From this view, I can link it and unlink it also. So I can choose a position like this one, and strategic and tactical are the 2 sections of the job description. And then you just hit link. And now you can see this one's orange, which lets me know that this customer complaint process has been linked to this position. You can also unlink it just by clicking it, and then it's just going to remove it. And again, I know it's removed because it's not orange anymore. So that's linked to job description. It's just another way to be able to see which processes have been linked to which positions. We're going to talk about the archive here when we get into Workplans, but just in general, the archive allows you to take tools that you've documented over here and archive them so that you can edit them and change them, but not forget what it used to look like. And this button allows you to view the archive, or what you have archived. The view deleted is like a trash bin. So if somebody or anybody has gone and deleted process tools over here and you did that by mistake, or you want to restore them for whatever reason because it was an accident, you can always go to View Deleted here and restore them. So on the process tools page, nothing's actually gone forever. It will always end up here in this View Deleted or like a trash can folder. Okay, so over to the left here are all of the tools or templates that we have available for you to document your processes with. So that's what all of these tools are about. The very first one you see here at the top is called a work plan. And a work plan is just simply a step-by-step set of instructions, explanations, actions that someone would take to complete the process. The work plan is at the top of the process tools here because it's the one that you want to use the most. It's the one that you always want to start with. This becomes the training for the process. It becomes the details of the process. You can have multiple work plans and multiple of other tools as well. And if you have more than one work plan, it's generally because there's more than one workflow or more than one thing that happens within the process. So this, again, is part of the art of kind of defining your processes. You want to think 4 key functions. You want to think which function, getting, doing, guiding, running, one of the 4. What is the name of the sub-function, client service, which is the broad category? What is the process title, customer complaints? And then what goes in that process? What are the sub-workflows or the sub-areas within that process? There's a quick example I like to show regarding this just because it makes sense because it's a logical process that's clear to most people. You have accounts payable. So it's in the finance sub-function. That's the broad category. And we've called the process accounts payable. And then within it, we have all of these work plans which show all the different things that happen related to accounts payable. So you can't really have one work plan that would be, you can, but you wouldn't want to have one big work plan called accounts payable and list out all the tasks for how you do invoices and check deposits and bank deposits and special invoices and check payments, and it would just be too much. It would be too much for someone to kind of understand and learn. You want them to be able to zero in on the workflow you're talking about and see the tasks of that specifically. So how we do that is we build in separate work plans like these for all the different workflows that go within it. Another way to view the work plans in this context is they're like the sub-processes. So this is the process, and these are the sub-processes. All right, so I'm going to go back to that accounts customer complaint process. The next tool down is called checklists, and the checklist tool is for quality control. It's when you want some verification that the steps have been followed. So that's the checklist tool. If the process doesn't need that, if it doesn't need any quality control, verification, you don't want someone checking something, they don't need to check it off as they do it, then you just don't use this tool. And that rings true for all of the rest of the process tools. You definitely want to have a work plan, but if you don't need a checklist or a script or a file or a form or any of these, then you just don't use those tools. You leave them blank. But if the process does need those, then obviously you build them. Next tool down is called a script. This is what a script looks like. We're going to cover this in more detail next week, but I just want you to see what it is. This is a template for documenting a conversation, anything that happens verbally. This tool is called uploaded files. This is the next tool down. You want to use this when you have a document in a certain software format, like Word, Excel, PowerPoint, or a PDF document, and you want to preserve it in that format. So you don't want to put it into any of the other tools. You want it to stay a spreadsheet, or you want it to stay a PowerPoint presentation. So using this tool, you can upload the whole file to TouchStone, and then it lives here in TouchStone. And when you access it, if I hit View File here, it would open this software that this was uploaded in. So it would open Word and show it to me in Word, or open Excel and show it to me in Excel. The Documents tool here is kind of like a blank Word document. That's why it's called Documents. This is it acts like a blank Word document, so you can use it for whatever purpose you see fit. You can cut and paste things into it. You can write a letter. The next tool down is called a Custom Form. And remember, we're going to go through all of these in way more detail. I'm just kind of giving you an overview of what they all are right now. So the Custom Form tool is the newest of our tools, and it allows you to create web forms, really. It kind of works like Google Forms. So you can create fields here and titles where people can fill in information. So that's what this one is. You can also do multiple choice questions, checklist boxes, drop down. These two are for filling in information, a big field in a paragraph or a short answer field. This is the paragraph field. If I pulled this, it would expand out. So use the Custom Form tool when you need some information gathered about the process. And all of this can be done electronically and TouchStone through the dashboard. People can fill these forms out. Where we are now is where we're creating the form. Where it's used is over here on the dashboard screen. Next tool down is called a policy note. And this gives you a policy template to document important policies about the process. Again, if there aren't any policies, then you just don't use this tool. Then we have a video upload tool, mainly for training purposes, where you can upload training videos. And then there's an audio tool as well, where it's just a flat MP3 file. So these are all the tools available to document with. If you get overwhelmed by all the tools, I would suggest that you just focus on the work plans. So think about building a work plan first. Consider, is there just one work plan in this process, or are there multiple work plans? Are there multiple things that happen in different workflows, or is there just one thing from beginning to end, a set of tasks? Then go and start documenting your work plan. As you document the work plan, it might become obvious to you that, oh, I really need a form, or this is a really important policy, I'm going to put it in the policy tool. Or in the end, you might decide, I really could use a checklist for this. So the need for these other templates will come to you as you start to go through and document the work plan. Don't force the use of the other tools. If it doesn't make sense, then don't use that tool. Sometimes I think people overcomplicate things by trying to use all the tools when it's not necessary for them to actually use them. Okay, so let's talk about how to build a work plan. All the tools work the same way. If I want to build a work plan, I just click the title right here, and then I'm going to put in the name of the work plan, and then the objective field appears. This again is the purpose of the work plan. If the process only has one work plan in it, so I know because I've thought about it in advance, there's not going to be any other work plans. There's only one thing that happens, a set of tasks from beginning to end. Then I know that 9 times out of 10, the process title is the same as the work plan title. So let me say that again. If the process is only going to have one work plan in it, then usually the name of that work plan is the same as the name of the process. So customer complaints, I would call this customer complaints. If there's going to be multiple work plans, then you'll want to put in different titles. Like here I've got customer complaint processing. So these are the steps to process the complaint. And then I've got another work plan here called customer complaint guidelines. And I'll show you the difference between these two. But these are 2 different work plans. They're going to have different titles. But if there's only one work plan in the process, just call it the same as the process title, and the objective will be the same as well. So after you put the title in, you hit create, and now you'll see I've got 3 work plans here. These 2 that were originally here and this new one I just created. So if I was going to start to build this, I'd first start by adding a task. So I click Add Task, and then I click on the task field, and then this becomes task 1. So I'd write out the first step and save it. And then I go to the second step, and now this is task 2. Now there's no reason to number these. I'm just doing it for example purposes because you see it's numbered here to the side. So you start in on the work plan going step by step by step. In fact, this template forces you into the step by step by step. And it's on purpose because it creates consistency. Good documentation goes clear, delineated step by step by step. And so we're forcing you to add a task, add a task, add a task. Otherwise, the tendency is to just write out big, long steps inside of one field. And they aren't broken apart, and it's not as easy for people to see each step and what to do. All of the tasks are drag and drop, so I can pull these up and pull these down to adjust the order. So after you've built a work plan, if you notice there's a task missing, then you can hit Add Task, add it to the bottom, and then drag it to the top. Everything's click to edit here as well. So you'll notice I'm just mouse clicking on this task, and it opens for me to edit. Let's talk about the toolbar here for a minute. All of these toolbar functions are pretty familiar to everyone by now. They're what most software editing tools have. These two items are for cutting and pasting. So if you want to cut and paste in from Word or from another format, you can use this and it'll cut it in as flat text. You can also just right click. Here I could paste as text or I could paste directly. When you're cutting and pasting in from Word, if you don't cut it as and paste it as text, then you're going to take the formatting from Word and you're going to paste it into this task. You may or may not want that. The downside of cutting and pasting in that Word formatting is that sometimes the font family and the font size are different than what they are when you're typing directly into TouchStone. So your documentation the text looks different from other work plans, which would drive me crazy, but that it's up to you to decide. So just know that if you cut it in directly, like you hit paste here or you use this, it's going to paste in whatever Word formatting existed in your Word document. The font inside of TouchStone is 10-point Arial. When you export or print things, it exports it as 12-point font, which is what we normally are used to seeing, but 10-point Arial is a good kind of font size on most web browsers. Then we have bold, underline, delete, all this good stuff. There's two special things inside of the toolbar. One is the hyperlink tool. So that's this link right here. So if I want to create a hyperlink, I highlight the link word, and then I go to this hyperlink chain, click it. Now the hyperlink tool is opened. And if I hit this drop down, I see all the different link options. An external link is something that lives outside of TouchStone. So if you want to link to another website, another web page, another web tool for that matter, you can choose external link and then you put the URL in for that page and hit insert and save it, and then this word becomes the link. Sometimes I see people putting in, like, if I would go here and copy this and then I just paste it into here, you can do that, and when I save this, this will be a link, but it's just kind of messy looking. It's just harder. It just looks a little more confusing or sloppy. So instead of doing that, I would highlight, create a word that represents what this link is, highlight it, go to the hyperlink tool, the drop down, go to external link, and then I paste this URL in here, and now this link word, this becomes the link. So if you have these web addresses pasted into your text, then clean it up because it just looks better this way. Also in the hyperlink tool, in addition to external links, you can link to things inside of TouchStone. So I could link to a process from this work plan to a process, from this task in this work plan to a whole other process. If I choose process, now I'm going to see a drop down of all my processes in TouchStone in alphabetical order, and I would find the process, and then I hit insert. So why you would want to link from a work plan to another process is if you want to show the relationship. So inside of this particular task, when someone's performing it, say they need to have information from another process in order to finish it, or you want to show them how this task affects another process, then you create a hyperlink to that process. And then when somebody clicks on it, they can see that process. You also may want to show where a process ends and another one begins. And you can do that by creating these links. The links also help eliminate against redundancy. So if I'm inside of one process or one work plan and I need information from another one, rather than repeating that information inside of the work plan I'm in, I just create a hyperlink to that other process. Another kind of quick example of this would be like, let's say this is a sales process and I've got to enter a lead into the CRM as task 1. But leads are entered into the CRM inside of 10 different processes throughout the company. So I'd want a process called entering leads into the CRM, and then I would hyperlink it to every task where that needs to occur. So then that if that process entering leads into the CRM ever needed to be updated, I only have to update it in one place, and wherever it's linked, people get access to that updated process. So it eliminates against redundancy. The other link types are tools. So here's work plans, checklists, scripts. So these are most commonly used when I'm in the work plan and I'm referencing something else inside of the process, another one of the tools. So if I have a form in a process, I might say, fill out this form, and I create a link right to it. So I go to custom forms, I'd find the tool I want to link to, and I hit insert. And then when a person clicks on that link, it'll take them right to the form or the checklist or the video, whatever you're referring to. So remember the hyperlink tool. It's really useful. It shows the relationships between the processes. Back in the day when I was first out of business school, which was a long time ago, we used to do flow charts for processes. So we would go into clients' locations and we create these huge process maps, we called them. It's a whole discipline in business. It's called process mapping. And we would have walls just covered with like all these flow charts. And it was a pretty cool exercise and it was super fun for me because that's the kind of way my mind thinks about business. And it was good for the business owners because they started to see their business as a series of processes that all flow together. The problem with it is that it's really hard to implement something like that. It's almost impossible because you have these big, huge flow charts, and then at some level, say this level here at the work plan level, the work plans start to connect other things. They connect to forms, they connect to other processes, and so it became this mess, a flow chart mess. And then when you tried to take one flow chart to a specific department, it's useful because they could see how the processes connect, but they couldn't really implement and use it on a day-to-day basis because it was just too confusing. So TouchStone supersedes all of that. It is the answer to that confusion and issue. Because what we do in TouchStone is we build things in outlines. And then through the 4 functions, the sub-functions, the processes, the work plans, and then at the work plan level here, right, even at the process level, we show the connections through the hyperlinks. If you want to see where one thing goes and another thing ends, or where one thing flows to another thing, you can see that through the hyperlinks, and you build it through the hyperlinks. And then it becomes very practical because someone's going through an outline, 1, 2, 3, click, oh, there it is there, now it comes back, 4 or 5. So it's an easier way to see things. Okay, so second kind of special thing inside of this toolbar is the image uploader, which is this little tree icon. So the image uploader allows you to take pictures and upload them to the process. So I think I showed this a few sessions ago, but I'll just kind of show it again because I think it's cool. There's this tool I have called Jing right here. You can download this for free on the internet. It's built by a tool called Snagit. So this is what it looks like. Jing. Smith Tech is the company that builds it, but it's a free version of a more robust tool called Snagit. So Jing is good. You can also, if you don't want to download something from the internet, you can always use your snipping tool, which is, I don't know if you can see it, but this is what it looks like. This is the Windows operating system version of their snipping tool that comes free inside of your operating system. I know Macs have their own version of this as well, but you can use this snipping tool. I like this one less because you can take a picture like this, but then, when you go to draw arrows, it looks like this, and you can't really write very well. I have horrible handwriting, but this makes it horrible even worse. So it just doesn't look as good. In Jing, when I take a picture, so I'm going to put the crosshairs, I can take a small little snippet of this and let go, and then I hit capture. And now this picture inside of Jing, I can take arrows and make arrows on it like that. Or I can do text boxes. I can move, should have made this a little bigger, but I can type in text right here. You can highlight things with like that. You can change the colors to different colors. So it just allows you to create kind of a cooler looking screenshot image. Once you've taken the picture, whether you use your snipping tool or something like Jing, I always save these as, I just save them as pic, but you choose a word you want to use. And when you save it, I always save these to my desktop. Save, easy as that. Then I go to TouchStone, hit the image uploader, choose file. It always defaults to my desktop. I choose pic because that's what I saved it as. Hit open, insert, and then there's the picture. Now the next time I do it, next time I take a picture, I go save as, and I call it pic again. And then I save it to my desktop, and then it overwrites the one that was already there. So I'm not having, 100 images all over my desktop. I just overwrite that existing one. There's no reason to save them on your desktop when they're inside of TouchStone. So just overwrite and overwrite and overwrite, and you can take, 10 images in one day, and you don't have any clutter of images. Once the image is in, I can shrink it. I'm just holding my mouse click down, so I'm dragging it in, making it smaller or bigger. And then when I save it, you see this picture. So images are great for documentation. Take pictures of things whenever it's possible because it helps to see it visually. You still want to describe what's happening, but if I can see a picture of how that's supposed to look, then that's really useful for training purposes. Even when you're referring to like the completion of a form or something else in another software tool, images work really well. So I'll hit cancel on this. If I go down, like this is an example. So say I have a custom form in here for what to fill out when you're doing customer complaints. I can go here and take a picture of this form, and then I can say refer to step 1, and I can do, fill this out. And so I can do little notations to every single one of these, and then again, save it as pic, save, and then it overwrites it on my desktop, and then I can insert it into one of these tasks. So get creative with your screenshots because you can really utilize them well to demonstrate things in your documentation. I chose the wrong file, but that's the idea. So that's the tasks. Expectations are guidelines, rules, their timing, anything extra you want to say about the process that's not a part of the tasks. So I'll show you some examples of that here in a minute, but expectations are for things that need to be known about the work plan but aren't a part of the actions. So let's go over these toolbar items right here. This little crosshairs icon will allow you to move a process tool from one process to another. So if this work plan here I'm on, I put inside of the wrong process, or I wanted to take it from this and combine it into another one, I can hit this toolbar item, hit the drop down. Now I'm looking at my sub-functions. So I'm looking for the process I want to move it into. Let's say it's the communications process. Choose the process you want to move it into and hit save. Now that work plan is gone from here. You'll see it's gone, and it's inside of that process I chose. So you can take processes and combine them. You can pull things apart from them. This is a handy toolbar item when you're dealing with library processes, so processes you've pulled from the library. If you remember that from the first session, each of the 4 functions has a library of pre-built processes. If you pull a library process and then you look at it and there's some things in it that you like, but you have your own process for that, but you want maybe a few of the tools, just take those tools out of that library process and move them into yours, and then delete the library process. Another reason you'll use this toolbar item is if you want to combine processes or pull them apart, moving tools from one to the other. This icon is for printing. You're going to see this all over TouchStone. It's called the export arrow. Underneath it, you can print, you can export to Word, you can print to a PDF, or you can email any of the process tools. Next toolbar item over is the archive. So here, if I click archive and then I say OK, now TouchStone has taken a copy of this work plan here and put it into the archive. And if I go view archived, hit the drop down here, I'm looking for a work plan I archived, then I'm going to see it right here. So from this view, I can restore it, or I can just click here and see it. So use the archive if you want to preserve or you want to remember your processes at a certain state. If you're having an employee go in and edit and change a process and you want to compare you want to see what they did without them having to export it, then archive it. Then you can go back and view it in the archive. You can even restore it, take a look and see what they did, what the differences are. Some of you are ISO 9000 compliant, and they require you to keep versions of things. So that's another reason to use the archive. This toolbar item here is delete. So if I click this, I'm not going to do it because I'm going to use this work plan and say OK, then this work plan would be deleted. Only administrators can delete, by the way. So if you're set up as a regular user, you won't have the option to delete. Having said that, if something accidentally gets deleted, you go here to view deleted and you can restore it. So let's talk about what makes a good work plan, and then we'll get into checklists here briefly. So work plans should be step by step, first of all. They should have clear delineated steps whenever possible. If something's very rudimentary, it's kind of easy to see the steps and write those steps out. It's when something gets riddled with kind of if-thens or has a lot of information in each of the steps is when things get harder to document or more challenging. So a few techniques for it. You see how this task is a bunch of sentences? Locate the customer's invoice, gather the information, it's a list. I can read this and kind of see it, but I have to study it to kind of understand what to do. So if you have the option, break text up, locate the customer's invoice. So I'd probably do just a space here. If you can't locate the invoice, ask the customer if they have an invoice number. So that's kind of like, I'd break that apart. Then we get into a list here with commas. Rather than doing a list in commas, use the bullet points. So I just bullet pointed that, and then I hit enter. I'm going to bullet point that and bullet point that. So now it's like a list. I can get rid of these commas. I can even do a list of lists if I wanted to. So I take this icon and I can indent it in right here And now this becomes a sub-bullet to this bullet above. And then save it. Now you can see, if you remembered what it looked like before, this is better because my eye's kind of going to each of the different pieces of this task. I'm seeing these steps more clearly delineated. It's more of a step-by-step with clear, specific steps. So if you have any tasks that look like paragraphs, they look like 3 or 4 sentences, break them apart just so you can see each of the kind of sub-steps, and use bullets and sub-bullets to delineate things instead of using commas. Don't write it like a story, write it like a list, and then it makes it easier for people to understand that information. When I'm looking at work plans, one of the biggest things that I see is that there's not enough information. There's not enough detail. So this is something to be mindful of in your work plans. Think about what it would take to have someone with a minimum competency level go in and be able to understand how to do this work. So think about this idea of a minimum competency level, because that answers the question for you, is it enough detail or is it not enough? So if I'm hiring someone to handle customer complaints, if one of the prerequisites or one of the qualifications of this position is that they know Microsoft Word products, or that they have had 5 years of customer service experience, or that they know a certain software package that you use, they've already been trained in it. Look at those qualifications and then write the work plans from that point forward. So for example, if this person had to know Word software, or I would never have hired them, then in the work plan, I don't need to explain how to open a Word document or how to edit an Excel spreadsheet. They already know that. I hired them because they knew that. So think about those kind of situations, and that will help you to decide what's enough detail and what's not enough. If you're dealing with high-level processes, like you're hiring doctors or you're hiring engineers, you don't need to write work plans that explain to them how to be a doctor and how to be an engineer. Like, they went to school for that. You're hiring them because they know that. So write the work plans from that point forward. How do you do it? What do you need them to do? And how is that important to your business? And start the work plan from there. The opposite of that is when you're hiring entry-level staff, people who may not have college educations. You're wanting to train them in what you know. And this is, a good situation to be in, because if you have documentation which trains them, shows them what to do, gives them that education, then you can generally get those employees for less than you'd have to pay someone if they had that experience already. So think about this idea of what's enough detail, what's too much detail, what's necessary in order for you to use this work plan to fully train someone in how to do the work. You'll see a few examples of expectations down here. It's when you just have something to say about the work plan that's either subjective, quantitative, something important that you want to get across to the person doing this, but it's not a part of the steps. It's not a part of the 1, 2, 3, 4 of the process. Here's an example of a hyperlink. So this is a link to this policy note right here. So in the task, I'm saying, if it's a warranty issue, follow the warranty and guarantee policy. Here's a link to a script. If it's not a warranty issue and you need to resolve the problem, use the providing a solution script. So if there's these words that need to be said through frequently asked questions or through a telephone conversation, don't put those words into the work plan. Put them into the script, because this template is easier to see and use for that purpose than it would be if it was just embedded into the tasks of a work plan. It isolates it. Because what ends up happening over time is when someone's trained in the work plan, they're studying it, they learn it, they've been tested on it, they're using it, they don't need to necessarily look at it all the time. They already know. But they may want to have the script open, or they may want to have the frequently asked questions open, or the form they need. They don't need all the details of what's in the work plan. There's a second work plan here that I'm calling Customer Complaint Guidelines. So this is just another technique for work plans. You may have a work plan on the tasks, the steps, but then you may have things you use more for training, more for understanding, and you can list those and call it guidelines, or sometimes it's called resources, things to do, things to study. And it's just kind of like guidelines on the customer complaint process. And I wanted to show this because the step-by-step task-driven work plan is what you're going to use it for the most, but you can also use work plans for things like this. It's just information people need to know. So let's talk about checklists. To build a checklist, it's the same as the work plans. You just click the checklist title, you put in the name of the checklist, then you hit create, and now you've got the checklist built. To go build the checklist, I just click this button called Add Checklist Item, and two fields open. There's the title field and then a field for a further description. So this is the actual step, and this is more information if you need it. Be careful about this more information field. The details of how to perform this step should really be in the work plan. The checklist should really just be verification. It's simple items that someone checks off as they do them. If they need to know more about how to do this step, they should be able to reference back to the work plan, and that should have a lot of detail on how to do it. We put this field in because people wanted it, basically. That's the reason. If it was totally up to me, I probably have left this out, the description field, because the description really belongs here. Having said that, you can use the description field in any way that you want. Putting in details or things that are important about this particular step, that's what this field is for. And then when I save this, it puts the title, the checklist item, right next to the box, and then you see this little more info area. And then I go add checklist item again, and then this is the step, and then this is the more info area. And now I've got two checklist items or boxes. So use the checklist when you need some quality control. You need some verification that the steps have been followed. You can also take a work plan in TouchStone like this one and turn it into a checklist using this toolbar item right here. One click, I say okay, and now this work plan has been turned into a checklist, and you see it right here. It's still a work plan, it's still up here, but now in addition to being a work plan, it's also a checklist. And all TouchStone did was take the tasks and put them next to these checklist boxes. So this can be a nice tool because it gives you a way to take the tasks and just make them the quality control. And sometimes that's all the checklist is the task, and someone needs to check them off as they do them. When I create work plans, build work plans into checklists, I like to go and edit them down a little bit. So again, you don't need all that information because really they're just checking off they did it. Check, check, check. If I need to know more about how to locate the customer's invoice, I could go back to the work plan and see that. But since I'm doing this all the time, I'm probably not going to need to be reminded of that unless I'm a new employee. Don't overdo your checklists. There's a good rule of thumb here. If you want if you need quality control every time somebody does this work, you need verification that they did it, either for management purposes or for customer service purposes, or maybe it's a process that's so complicated the employees themselves need to remember what they did and didn't do, then go and create a checklist for it. Another key point, if you don't have a manager reviewing the checklist, so making sure they've been done, then there's no point in having the checklist. So I firmly believe this. If you're not going to have someone looking at these checklists, a manager reviewing them, even if it's just to check that they're there, that they've been completed, then you shouldn't have them, because it just sends the wrong message to employees. You're giving them all these checklists to do, but nobody's looking at them anyway, so they're going to start to get cynical about the purpose of the checklist and just stop doing it. And then when no one is asking, they stop doing it. Now suddenly the culture is becoming, they give us these things that nobody cares anyway. So make it easy, make a commitment to yourself that if you're going to have a checklist, have a manager reviewing them. We make that super easy inside of TouchStone. So on the dashboard functionality, these checklists can be completed. They can be filled out and saved back to TouchStone. And then a manager can run a report and see all the checklists that people have done that day or that week or that month. When I do this, I run a report. I just make sure that they're all there. And unless there's a problem or an issue, a lot of times I don't go look at every single one to make sure that every single box was checked off. Sometimes I do, particularly if there's a problem. And sometimes I just spot check them. But everyone knows around here that we're looking at the checklist. So if they're not doing them, eventually it's gonna get known. And if you follow through on that, just 5 minutes a day, just running a report, seeing if they're there, then suddenly the employees are going to start to understand that it's important and that you use it for quality reasons. Checklists can export also, just like the other tools. So if you want these in a hard copy format, you can export it to Word or to a PDF and print them if you like. I don't like these two options for reasons I've said before because it just creates more paper. But sometimes you are in a situation where you have to have them on a clipboard or whatever it is, and you need an exported checklist. All the dashboard functionality is mobile compliant, by the way. If I didn't point that out before, you didn't know it. So employees can easily be on their phones and just check, save, and then the checklist gets saved back to TouchStone. All right, so I'm running a little late today, but I want to talk about the process of the week here briefly, and I might run over a few minutes, so if you have to nog off, that's totally fine. This is a good process, by the way, the customer complaint process. This is a library process, and you can get all these tools from the library. Having a way to capture when customers are dissatisfied is really important. Making sure that they're satisfied is also really important. So here in the doing the business function, that's where I'm in right now, there's the customer complaint process, which you could find in the library. And there's also this one called client satisfaction. So client satisfaction, this process is a pretty good one. It kind of explains a step-by-step for how to do quality control surveys. It connects with the customer service process. You see this link right here? So this is an example of what I was meaning by how processes connect with each other. So somebody needs, if they're going through a satisfaction survey and the customer is unsatisfied about something, then they need to connect or follow the customer complaint process. I don't have to repeat the steps of the customer complaint process inside of here because that's a whole other process and I just make a link to it. So there's this cool little these statistics that I gathered on customer complaints, and this is in the library too, so you can take a look at this later. But this just, I think all of us know this intuitively, but there are these statistics that are widely available on the internet which just talk about the issues around poor quality and how the statistics and numbers on what it takes to replace a customer as opposed to making an existing customer happy. I don't know if you do a lot of online shopping, but I do because I hate going to department stores or the mall, God forbid. But online shopping, I've noticed the customer service for the companies that I use is extraordinary. Like even to the point, if I get sent something and I don't like it, and a lot of times these companies will say, just keep it, we'll send you another one. So what these companies are realizing, and what we all should know, is that if a customer is unhappy, they're going to complain about it 96% of the time. And to keep a happy customer is way less expensive than it is to get a new customer. And so that's the bottom line of it. So for your purposes, think about what it's worth to you to keep a happy customer or keep a customer happy. What can you afford to spend to do that, especially if you have repeat business? So the customer satisfaction process as well as the customer complaint process really goes down these lines. Creating a list of client service standards is a good thing to do. So this is just a sample list, client service standards. And again, you can find this in the library process. So coming up with the top 10 or top things that you believe to be true, that your dedication, your commitment to your customers. How will you exceed their expectations? Having all this listed out and then reviewing it with your employees, having them see it, study it together, talk about it. When a problem comes up, we have a motto around here that we always do the right thing. So when a problem comes up, we all ask ourselves, what would be the right thing to do here? And it's not always give the customer all their money back. It's not always that. But the question is, what's the right thing to do? So in the customer service standards, what is your version of that? What is the right thing to do when these situations come up? Or what do you believe in to be true? So this kind of list and set of mottos or just set of customer service standards, like we call them, can really help every employee kind of decide and understand the culture of the business and how customers are to be treated. And then in addition, there's the idea of having surveys. So these are customer satisfaction surveys that you can send out. There's examples of ones down here. I'm not a big fan of surveys. I don't think that people really do that wholeheartedly. It's easy to use ServiceMonkey and get customer surveys out there, but people don't generally do them. What's best is calls, client satisfaction calls. So making these phone calls, here's a script for one that you'll see in the process. Especially if you deal with high-ticket items or service projects, things that have a finish, a beginning, and an end, calling the customer and spending 5 minutes saying, how did it go? What did we do? What did we do that you liked? What did you have issues with? This is just a really great thing to do for your customers. It makes them feel heard, makes them feel like you care. It's worth the whatever amount of money per hour you have to pay to get someone to do this. If you think about these statistics again, and all the money that you are saving to have a happy customer, it's absolutely worth it. And if you need to run some of these numbers for yourself just so you can provide some evidence for yourself, then definitely do it. Because I don't think you'll find a situation where spending the extra money to make sure a customer is satisfied isn't worth it. Also, it helps for your referral generation because you can connect this with a referral process where you're asking for referrals. So here quickly before I let you go, I'm just going to show you how some of these tools can be used on the dashboard. So I'm just logging in. I'm logged in here as a customer service person. I just opened another browser. This is Firefox. So if you had a customer service person and they were going into their dashboard to access either the customer complaint process or the customer service process, or customer appreciation process, this is what it would look like. So they click customer service here. Now they're seeing a list of all their processes that they're responsible for. If they're dealing with a customer complaint, they can click on this customer complaint process. I can shrink this up just so it's easier to see what's on this screen. I can go to the custom form here, click open the form, fill out this information. So this is the customer service person going through the process, filling out all this information as they talk to the customer. And then they can title it as the customer's name. They can put in notes, and then they save it. So now this form has been saved back to TouchStone. If they're doing the client satisfaction process, same idea. They can go down to any one of these forms and fill these forms out. Here's the client satisfaction survey. So they're on the phone with the person. They go through, fill out all the information as they're speaking with them. They put in their comments, their concerns, were they treated, how were they treated, and then they can save all this back to TouchStone. Now I'm going back to my account that we were just in. If I go to my dashboard, I'm the customer service person's manager. Here's Mary. So I can see what she's done in TouchStone. I can go here to the report tool once a day or whenever I see fit. I can go down to Mary's name and run a date range here, and then I hit run report, and now I can see all the forms that she's filled out. So some of you may already have a CRM or another tool that kind of handles customer service issues, but for those of you who don't, TouchStone's a great way to kind of get that ball rolling with customer complaints and customer service, and a way to analyze and making sure that people are doing that work.